This podcast is part of the Game and Entertainment Network. Visit tgenetwork.net to find the latest episodes from all our shows.
It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Agronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show.
Let's do this.
Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 123. And tonight, I'm joined by Ashgar.
Hello.
Grace.
Hello.
Kodra.
Hi.
And Tam.
Hello.
So, I just realized that we probably should have recorded all the pre-roll stuff that we were talking about, because we were just talking about Steven Universe, and if you're not watching the show, you should totally try and watch it. Because we had a little conversation about it. But anyway, you guys missed it. Sorry. We're not going to repeat ourselves. Kodra, you were out last week, right?
No.
No? God, I thought, who was gone? Tam was gone.
Tam was gone.
Yeah, I was gone.
There we go. Okay. Sorry. But more importantly than that, there were a bunch of people at Pax West. And that's what I was leading up to. Pax West, formerly known as Pax Prime.
Yeah, so I was at PAX Prime, and it was a fun show. I went Sunday and Monday, so I got to see 2 days worth of content, which was a pretty good amount. I don't know, wasn't exactly sure what the big attractions there were. I guess there was a huge amount of Dishonored presence. Like, Dishonored 2 is the big game coming out soon.
Yeah, Bethsoft had a big booth.
Yeah, they did.
Like a really fancy... It was set up to look like an assassin's study, like museum-style thing.
And they had a big ol', one of the robots in there. I'm looking forward to it.
I can't wait for that game.
Well, the thing with that is, it was a given I was going to play it regardless of any of the publicity, so any of the cool trailers, anything else coming out about the game was just gravy at this point.
Yeah.
Prey, on the other hand, I'm still not sure if it's a game I'll enjoy.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it feels nothing like... So far, the footage that I've seen, it feels nothing like the original. So it's like a whole different reimagining thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
Really... The weird thing about PAX West is, I was kind of sort of looking for PAX West news, but it didn't seem like there was a whole lot of stuff that came out of it other than a really weird Gearbox show.
I heard that was really weird.
I did not hear about this.
Randy Pitchford got up on stage with a guitar and sang a song about internet trolls.
Huh.
More or less.
Weird.
And they brought on they did this show, and it was pretty much exclusively Battleborn. Okay. And they said, at the very beginning, that they're not going to talk about Borderlands at all. And it's almost as if you could hear, an audible sigh of frustration from the crowd at that point.
Huh.
Makes sense.
Because, leading up to this, everyone thought, oh man, they're probably going to tell us about Borderlands 3. No, they're not. But there were a lot of weird, awkward moments in that show. I watched most of it, flipping back and forth between segments. The guitar thing was the weirdest.
Yeah, so I, as I usually do, spent most of my time at the indie booths, and saw a bunch of really cool games. So one of the ones that came across my radar, which was really funny, was 20XX. Which they had a really cool booth for, and they were doing these 2-player, procedurally generated Mega Man X style adventures.
Wow. Okay, that sounds cool.
And I was like, oh my goodness.
But
I
you
have to
already
get this game.
have that game?
I have to get this game, and I have to get a copy for Ash. And I walked away because I was going to go to an ATM to pick up some cash, and then I was like, wait a second. 20XX. I'm pretty sure Ash and I already own this game.
Yeah.
I think we've already talked about it on the show, too.
You
had less than kind things to say about it when we previously talked about it.
Yeah, we had some not nice things to say when we previously talked about it. I have some very nice things to say about it now. They've done a lot better of a job improving the feel of moving around and jumping around, which was really the issue before. So that was exciting. Another game I got to play, which was very cool, was a Vine game called Open Sorcery.
A Vine game?
Yes, so like a text-based, the Vine engine, the text-based engine for games.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like the short video website.
No. This is the same engine that Depression Quest was written in.
Oh, okay.
So it's all sort of text-based. You click on links in the game to get different outcomes. But the concept of the story is you're playing as a fire elemental who has been encapsulated in a C++ program, and your job is to act as a spiritual firewall, seeking out spiritual threats in the area and neutralizing them.
Okay, that sounds a little weird.
And so, like...
Putting it mildly.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, that sounds a little weird. Like, I
So-
complain about my code already having a mind of its own.
Well, and that's sort of the thing, is like you're technically this program, you're supposed to follow very specific instructions, but you start to sort of you have a very sophisticated programming, and eventually you can become an AI if you follow the right path, which is a problem. So it's interesting. I'm having fun with it.
Cool.
It's like $3 on iOS, and it's a really cool story. I recommend, if any of that sounded interesting, checking it out. A game that Tam and I sat down to play was Thornwatch.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I heard a little bit about this. Give me the full rundown.
Thornwatch is one of those co-op adventure RPG-ish, like RPG light board games, without the inaccessibility that a lot of them have.
Okay, first, let me clarify. This is a physical board game, not...
Yes, this is
Okay.
it's a physical board game.
Yes.
It is almost like a deck building game, but not quite.
Okay.
It's really akin to things like the Pathfinder card game and the Shadowrun sort of similar kind of card game.
Mm-hmm.
And like is taking hints from things like Mage Knight.
Yeah.
But the thing that I really liked about it is it's way, way, way more accessible than Mage Knight. Like, Mage Knight takes an hour or two to explain to a new player.
Yeah.
And they probably don't really get it after that explanation. But they might be able to participate in a game with the help of everyone else. And Thornwatch, we had it explained by somebody who like basically only sort of knew how the game worked, and it was still pretty clear. Which isn't to say that it was excessively simple. I mean, it was simpler than Mage Knight, but it was also not. It wasn't like childishly simple. But it also doesn't have the problem that the Pathfinder card game and the Shadowrun game have, where one person who knows how everything works just drives. So like, even though there are sometimes with some of those kinds of games, even if there are 4 people playing, it's really one person who's telling everyone else what to do because they figured out the right strategy. We had Paragon was with us, and he described that as like groupthink games.
Yeah.
Where what you do individually doesn't matter as much. Like, for example, in the Shadowrun game, you're dealt a hand of cards, but there's basically no reason not to play with your hand up all the time, like with your hand revealed all the time, so that everyone else can see what you're capable of doing. Whereas there's a number of decision points, and because you roll dice as part of the game, there's not guarantees. So you might make different choices based on what happens and so on and so forth. So it's
Go ahead.
cooperative, but I didn't feel like it was dominated by a single player who figured it all out.
I still feel like there's a decent amount of groupthink that go on in that game.
I
I liked it because it has a very particular design curve where the mechanics of the game and the theme of Thornwatch sort of work well, because at the beginning of the game, the monster is as powerful as it's ever going to be, and it's overwhelmingly powerful. And it is... You have to do everything you can to survive, and it's gonna be really close. Like, after the first turn of both times I played a demo of it, it felt like we were about to lose. But we had managed to weaken the monster just enough that the next time around, it didn't deal nearly as much damage, and we were able to push past that. So there's this, like, after you get beat up really badly in the beginning, there's this sense of, well, okay, now we can pull together. Now we have to, like, make every minor victory we can count.
So basically, instead of death by 1,000 cuts, it's win by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah, like, because you only lose the game when all of the wounds stack has been depleted. So, like, your entire party dies at once. But the monster gets weaker every time you deal a significant blow to it.
Yeah. And I don't know if that was just a quirk of the one encounter that we saw.
We saw 2 encounters. I saw a second encounter, which was also like that.
Okay.
Because it was like you're dealing with this swarm of creatures, and you can, like, remove the creatures one at a time, but for the creatures, they have to kill you all at once for you to lose. But it's a fun, lighter weight adventure card game.
Now, is it on the market now, or is it just being demoed?
It is being kickstarted right now.
Oh, Kickstarter.
Yeah.
You know, the thing is we've talked about this before. Like, I feel way more confident kickstarting a physical product than... Unless it requires forge work or, like, casting of metal.
Honestly, even the minis ones that I've done have been pretty reasonable.
Well, I only say that because, like, I kickstarted those steampunk metal dice, which in themselves are a bad idea because you'll almost kill your table when you roll them the first time. But that was like a year and a half in the making because, like, one person backed out after another until finally he found someone to do the production run.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I backed a different dice Kickstarter that was, like, actually delivered early.
Really?
I was about to say, I do know that there is that one guy who basically got bankrupted by his Kickstarter.
There's that too.
Yeah, this one was a friend of mine, and so he was super open every time he encountered a problem just to let us know, and I'm thankful he was. So we just, let it ride until it finally worked out. But, like, it was about a year and a half or so after the date of the Kickstarter when finally the production dice ran. And like I said, it's a horrible idea. Like, these are really heavy metal dice, and they clank horribly on the table, and it feels like you're going to put a hole in the table when you roll them, but they're awesome to look at.
So you should just use a glass table.
That's the worst idea ever. But yeah, like a card game especially, there are a bunch of people that make really nice cards. So I have zero question that one's gonna, if it makes, it will actually go to production.
It's a card and board game.
Oh,
so
okay.
Like you move around on a physical board.
So long as it's doesn't have the level of stretch goals that Ogre did.
Yeah, there are no stretch goals.
Because I want to say, like, I heard the Ogre final product was like 50 pounds. Like, the literal product that shipped was 50 pounds worth of stuff.
Yikes.
Anything else cool?
Hard to say. I went to PAX for not fun reasons. Like, PAX was business for me.
So there were some other fun things I got to see. I'm trying to remember. I played the Star Wars Destiny CCG, which was a
Who's putting that out?
Fantasy Flight.
Okay, that makes sense, I guess.
So you have 2 heroes, that you are playing against the dark side heroes with. And each hero starts with a certain amount of dice, and then you get resources, and you can play other cards which have the ability to put dice or effects onto the board, and then you roll your dice and try and get what you want so that you can deal damage to your opponent. And you either win by decking them or win by killing off both of their heroes. And it seems like the most likely way of winning is actually going to end up being decking someone, because you can become really effective by burning through cards, so you might as well try when you're starting to get desperate.
Interesting.
Like, I played against, I want to say, Paragon, and yeah, I was burning through cards a lot early on in the game and got to a pretty dominant position, and then just had to stop using cards at all because I was in danger of decking myself. And then in response, once I put him on the back foot, he was trying to recover by spending a lot of cards, but ultimately I was able to wear him through all of his deck. I could weather that assault.
Huh.
But it was one of those games where I really wish they had said it was a living card game.
Oh, why?
Because it is definitely a CCG, a dice-based CCG, which I think is silly.
How does that even work?
So, how I'm pretty sure it works is in a pack where you get a card that has a dice associated with it, you are going to get a set of 6 stickers, and then you're going to have to affix those stickers to one of the dice.
Okay, that just seems like a horrible idea.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it is fantasy play. It wouldn't be complete without a weird set of dice.
Yeah, and all of the dice are unique to the card that they are going on.
That might be a bit far.
What?
That feels like a bit far, though.
It feels pretty excessive, yeah.
Yup.
Well, like, I was thinking in terms of... I vaguely remember there being a Dungeons & Dragons collectible dice game. Am I remembering this correctly? To where...
That sounds right.
You would get dice, but the dice would be, like, have symbols on them representing a specific dice worth of power. So, like, you know, this dice may have 2 attack symbols and, like, 3 defensive and 1 botch. And the next one you get would be, like, 3 attack and 2 defensive. So there were subtle differences between them, but the dice themselves were the thing that you got, not stickers.
I mean, and so I am just guessing that's going to be how it is. Maybe each pack will come with its own dice. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seems weird. No
Yes,
offense to
I have a
Fantasy
skepticism.
Flights.
Yeah. But all of the
Reasonable.
dice of a given color were the same, with the exception of they had different stickers on their faces. So that's how I'm guessing they're doing it. The other the other thing I played was I'm blanking now. Well, I played a game called Hacknet, which is coming out with an expansion. Which have you heard of this game?
I played that game. A little bit, at least.
It is the game of a Unix terminal emulation, and you are trying to hack your way through a murder mystery using this Linux terminal, which gave me the weirdest sense of Uncanny Valley I've ever had, because I kept trying to do things that I knew I should be able to do because it was a Unix terminal, but they hadn't programmed in.
Yeah.
This seems like a game that I would not want to go anywhere near. Like, if I just sit and stare at a Unix terminal all day, I don't want to play a game that does that.
Yeah, it was like I kept trying to read the files by opening them in Vim.
Instead of manning the pages or pages?
Instead of catting.
Oh.
And so the right way to do it in the game is to do cat file name.
Ooh. Okay.
Well, because that's a standard. That's like the default Unix command to output the contents of a text file to the console is cat file name.
Right, but like everybody has better ways of doing it now.
Yes. RM works, but rm-rf doesn't. I spent a while trying to figure out how to kill a process because I kept doing kill-9 instead of just kill.
Why would you do a kill that wasn't kill-9?
Because sometimes you want to ask nicely.
No, I never
no.
want to ask nicely.
No. Because every piece of software is designed assuming you're just going to -9 it anyway. Maybe you know too much.
Yeah, that's
Programs
sort of
do treat those differently. Just putting that out there.
But yeah, it was an interesting one. Oh, right. I also played the new Elder Scrolls Hearthstone-like game.
I have heard that's really good.
It is really good. So, if you're familiar with Hearthstone, the big new mechanic in it is that there are 2 lanes that you can deploy your creatures to. Creatures can either attack the opponent general life total, or creatures in the same lane as them. But this means you can't just drop a single big taunt creature on the board and protect your general's life total that way. You have to have a taunt creature in each lane to have full protection.
Okay, this is basically one of my all-time favorite Magic the Gathering cards that everyone hated you playing, Raging River.
What's Raging River?
You basically had to split your defending and attacking into 2 lanes. Because a river now divides the center of the battlefield.
Interesting.
So you played things on one side or the other of the river, which meant if you didn't have defenders on one side of the river, I could just run my characters down there and attack you. And I think the last time it existed was during Unlimited, and then it was never reprinted after that, and was ultimately banned from tournament play because they felt it complicated the rules too much.
I am going to have to look this up now. That is a card I've never even heard of. Wow!
It was red to play, and it was an enchantment.
Yeah?
It was awesome. I loved playing it. It pissed people off, but...
Including tournament officials, apparently.
Yeah.
Okay, so flying creatures could...
Flying creatures could do anything, because they don't care about a river in the middle of the battlefield.
They could fly over the river. I want to point out that a card called Raging River being red is reminding me how little they respected the color wheel back then.
Well, I think that the theory was that a chasm opened in the earth and water spilled into it or something.
That, at best, that's a red-blue card.
Right. I mean, but remember, land destruction mostly was all red. And I think they were thinking, oh, this is like a land destruction, but no, not really.
Anyways, yes, that is what this is like, exactly.
That's awesome.
Only it's in play the entire time. And it's really interesting. There came a point in the game where I was like, well, he's kind of overrun this one lane, but I've whittled his health total down low enough that if I can just get a couple of points through, I win. So I dedicated all of my resources away from that lane and managed to alpha strike for the win. I think it's a much better core set of rules over Hearthstone. I think that simple dividing line of 2 lanes makes it really interesting.
Well, the thing that I keep hearing is that it is essentially Hearthstone, but for people who really liked Magic the Gathering, where it's not as whittled down as Hearthstone is, but it's still way easier and more simplified than any of the online Magic variants.
I mean, it still is. It doesn't have any interrupt or anything like that. So from that perspective, I feel like it's still very much closer to Hearthstone. I didn't see a huge amount of difference between the 2 games other than that one mechanic.
Okay. I think I signed up for beta or alpha and then never got around to playing it because I had other stuff to play.
Well, it's good. I'm having fun. I had fun in my one match.
Well, I remember when they demoed it at, I think, E3 last year, or they announced it at E3 last year. My thought was, do we really need another Hearthstone? And everything that I've heard about it, though, it seems like it's a really quality game.
Yeah, it is. It also does have, and I'm not entirely sure how this is going to end up getting used, it does have, like, faction identities, where, like, you have... I was playing a blue-green deck, and I don't know exactly what that means from a deck construction perspective. Like, I was playing a blue-green Dunmer deck, which I still don't quite know what that meant.
Yeah, like, definitely not Magic colors, because Dunmer would never be blue and green.
Blue, maybe.
Blue, maybe, yeah, but blue and black, not blue and green.
Or blue and red?
Or blue and red.
I mean, Dunmer were all about fire.
They're not evil.
They're just misunderstood.
They're all about fire.
That much true. So yeah, like black and red.
They might be white. You never know. Stop discriminating against the Dunmer.
I don't feel like there's anybody that gets to be white in the Elder Scrolls setting.
Bretons.
Really?
No.
No?
Bretons are
Who
awful
played
people.
ESO?
No, I'm not saying they're good people. I'm just saying that they do have, like, the white style of magic.
I don't think I agree with that.
What?
I don't really think I agree with that.
I don't think anybody gets to be the holy anything in Elder Scrolls. That's just not a thing that exists in that world.
The other thing white is known for is sort of their, like, they buff each other. A lot of working together. It's not necessarily holy. In fact, more recently, their color identity has been associated with, like, more militaristic things.
Honestly,
Like
if anybody's
soldiers.
going to be white, it's going to be the Red Guard.
That
I
probably.
believe that.
Because of their belief about the dead, and
Yeah,
you know, like
well,
I
also
could get behind them.
They're also
being,
really militaristic.
Yep.
They operate in groups. I'd go with that.
Yeah, like if anybody's going to be them, I'm mostly thinking of what represented white during the Mirage cycle of expansions, and yeah, like it was totally be Red Guard. Of all the weird esoteric conversations to get into.
Whatever. I do think it's coming at kind of a funny time, though. Since I got emails, I think, within days of each other saying both Hex and Duelyst announced the new set.
Yeah. Duelyst is a weird game.
Yeah, I'm not going to dispute that.
I still don't know if I like it or not.
I like it a lot. I think it's a
I
lot of
liked it.
fun. I want to play more of it, actually. That's one of the games I kind of played a little bit of and went away from, but I feel like there's a lot of cool stuff there. Oh, I also played Speedrunners. I don't know if you guys have played that at all.
I have seen it, and I own a couple copies, apparently, thanks to Humble Bundle, but I've not actually played it.
It's really good. It's a lot of, like, the idea is you're speedrunning around an area, competing against up to three other friends. And as you are running, the edge of the screen is getting smaller, and if you ever touch the edge of the screen, you die. So if you ever get too far behind someone, you're out of the game.
You basically get pushed off screen.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And you can do all sorts of stuff to, like, push the other player back, can't you?
There are items in the game that you can pick up that can help you. Like, if you can land on certain areas, you'll get items that help you do that. So you can get those items. You can also, like, hit things that make you go faster. And there are all sorts of obstacles that will slow other people down that, if you can avoid, they might run into.
Okay.
It's actually a good game at trying to get at the person in the lead, because they're the first person who's going to run into any obstacle.
Do they have Mario Kart-like abilities that target the lead?
I mean, most of the abilities target the people who are in front of you. So it's definitely got a like catch-up mechanisms in mind.
Cool. I've seen streams of it, and it looks like it would be fun to play with, 4 people. But it also seems like it would probably be better in a couch co-op-y kind of mode where you can like actually see and hear the reactions of the people that you're screwing with.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Sort of like Ultimate Chicken Horse.
Yep, which seems to be getting traction again.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
Did they show at Prime?
They did not.
Okay, like right around Prime though, I noticed people talking about it again on Twitter. So like, I didn't know if they had a good showing or.
I know Loading Ready Run did a stream of like the four of them playing it for like 4 hours, which was really cool.
Okay, so that might have been what kicked it back into the cycle, because I hadn't heard much about it in a while, and then all of a sudden people are talking about it actively on my Twitter timeline again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, sounds like you guys had a good time. Who all was actually there? Like, of the people that, are in our circle.
Paragon was there.
I think Paragon's at every PAX.
Yeah.
Inky was there.
Inky and Toadchild were there.
Cool.
Lior was there.
Awesome. Yeah, I think her and Vajra got, like, a couple days worth of tickets, maybe?
And Talarian was obviously there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Talarian was there.
Very tired.
But very cool.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a good time. I got to have some fun in the middle of all of the businessy stuff.
Well, and it sounded like you got to do a lot of the hanging out after hours part of PAX, which, is a thing.
Yeah. PAX Dev was good. I would go back to PAX Dev. It was definitely... I'd never been before, and it was definitely worth the trip. And I don't really go to any of the panels at PAX, because for me it's like, I'm just not that interested. Whereas the dev panels, a lot of them were really interesting. I went to a really good panel about FX. I went to a pretty good panel about hidden information. Just, nerding out about design stuff.
Yeah, I actually wish more of the PAX dev stuff actually made it onto YouTube than it does.
It intentionally doesn't.
It can't. They have a media blackout.
Ah, okay.
So, like, you're not allowed to take pictures, you're not allowed to record unless you've got express permission of the people running it, like running the panel. Which means that some panels are like, yes, please.
Yeah, I think PAX Dev looks more interesting than a lot of the stuff, even though it doesn't 100% apply to me.
It's so fun.
Because, like, last year at PAX South, the problem that I had with the panels was, well, I guess it's this year, technically, since it was January. Like a lot of the panels just didn't seem that interesting this time around. The first year there was a bunch of cool stuff, but like this time there just didn't really seem to be that many panels I was interested in. So instead I, was more interested in milling around with the large group of people that we had.
Yeah.
See, I actually had a couple of things I was really interested in. Just because I'm a big fan of Loading Ready Run, and so I went to their Corpline Live panel, which was a live comedy podcast happening while we were in the auditorium, which was awesome and hilarious.
Okay, well, we could probably close the tables on PAX West for now.
Mm-hmm.
Since it kind of got a little rambly, and then we did the whole figuring out Magic the Gathering colors. So we got two things to talk about now. And the order of which I don't know what to talk about, but let's talk about new business, since we talked about World of Warcraft last week. Tam, you have been playing a lot of Guild Wars 2, as have, a couple other people?
Yeah.
Me mostly.
And me.
Ash and Kodra jumped in with us today. So, okay. I feel like Kodra has the best when we quit Guild Wars 2 story.
So I logged into Guild Wars 2, and I was right in front of the Ascalon dungeon. And that seems right. That seems like exactly when I quit this game.
That was the beginning moment where I think a lot of us checked out.
I walked out of that dungeon, I logged out of the game, and I never logged back in. That was not a pleasant dungeon experience.
No, it was awful.
It's kind of, real.
I mean, it was easily the worst dungeon experience I've had in an MMO.
Nope. You might be forgetting Champions Online.
Yeah.
Champions was worse.
Yeah, that's fair.
Champions was a royal cluster.
Like, this was not much better, but this was better than Champions.
That's so very low bar.
Yeah, like the big problem with Champions for me was the fact that I went from having a perfectly reasonable and viable build in beta to not being able to do anything at release. And there were a lot of people that went through that.
That really wasn't the only problem with Champions.
It's true.
Yeah, their dungeons were not growing, which was a problem.
But so I have a friend who, disclosure, I have a friend who works at ArenaNet. And he talked about how he really enjoyed the expansion. And so I figured I'd pop in and give it a shot and take a look at what was different. It's been years since we played it. And what I found really interesting was I got back into it, and in the years since we've played it, I want different things out of MMOs now. Like, we were chatting over dinner, Kodra and I were chatting over dinner about, like, we ran around for most of this afternoon just clearing out a zone. Like, we finished a zone start to finish, just 100%ed it, and it felt really good. It was fun. We were running around. We did a whole bunch of different random stuff, and it was a generally good time. And, like, we were doing stuff in a group, and it was fun, and it felt like there were a lot of things we could do that weren't that wasn't go into a dungeon and fight some bosses.
Note that we still haven't actually tried going into a dungeon.
Yeah, we still haven't even tried going to a dungeon. It's entirely true. But, like, we can run around a zone and have fun with it, and they're kind of fun to it's kind of fun to mess around with them. It's got interesting stuff it's doing. I'm really interested in seeing where it goes with like the expansion content, because expansion content is pretty developed, I guess is the word for it. Like, they've clearly learned a lot from the last few years, and there's a bunch of stuff that's different about the game. Like hearts, for example, appear to be completely gone in the expansion content.
What's the equivalent, or is there an equivalent, or do they actually have quests?
Still, basically all the time.
Events are just constantly happening, and events were one of the coolest things in the base game already, and so it's just events are going on just all over the place.
Okay, so here's the question: do events actually reward something meaningful now?
Yes.
That was the problem with the old world. Is like, I don't care about karma. Like, I really don't care about karma.
Yeah.
Did they not used to reward XP?
They reward XP, but, like, I want reasonable loot from doing something.
Yeah.
So basically, in a zone, you get there's a list of rewards, and if you do an event in the zone, you get a reward, and you move on to the next item in the list. So those are mostly been crafting that so far. But you also get bags of loot and, like, boxes of stuff from doing events.
Okay, so it's kind of like the daily login thing, but it's for a zone as a whole. So when you just do anything in the zone, you start ticking things off the list?
Pretty much.
Okay, that seems way better than the old world.
A
lot of things seem way better than they used to be when we started this game.
That's what I was trying to explain. Like, Tam and I have had lengthy conversations about this game over the week. And that's what I was saying about things feeling meaningless is it didn't really matter what I did if I, fought my little butt off or, just barely did it. All I was going to get was karma, and karma doesn't really matter because I didn't care about the things I could buy with karma.
Yeah. So with this, it's way more, you can do whatever you like, and it all has meaning. Like, you get big XP rewards. You're actually making a difference in what's going on in the zone as well, especially in the new content.
A lot more so in the new content.
Yeah, like the new content, there's this whole thing going on in the new in at least the very first zone of the new content, where it's like it's almost like they turned Kithakor Forest into an event where during the day you get as much done as you can, because at night there's a ton of events, and if you're not prepared enough, you're going to get overrun. And so during the day you like help prepare, and during the night everybody collapses on these basically like rally points to try to defend and hold everything off. And it's this neat, I haven't played around with it a lot, but
yeah, and I think that's a lot of what. So I still don't think melee feels amazing in this game, but a lot of the problems I had was, sure, there's all these things I can tick off on a map, but I wanted there to be some meaningful reward for doing it other than ticking off things on a map and 100%ing said map.
Yeah. I got what I felt were really, really meaningful rewards from map completion.
Map completion did have meaningful rewards when we were playing before. It was like one of the few things that did.
Right, but there's a lot of bullshit that you have to wade through to get to a map completion in the old world.
It dramatically reduced the number of skill points per map, but also they changed skill points in general a bit. You used to earn them as you went around and also for leveling, and in the end game they were also a currency for some things. They decided to separate the currency and the character build parts of that system,
which is probably a good thing. They have one of the best post max level progression things I've ever seen.
Oh, that's cool.
Like, you hit max level and suddenly you unlock these, they're called masteries, and they use all of the same like concepts as the basic hero points. Like, you can go around the map, you can find mastery points, you can buy abilities with mastery. But in order to unlock a mastery ability, you need to gain a certain amount of XP relevant to the thing that you're trying to level up. So, like, if you want to level up something that's good in an expansion zone, you have to level in an expansion zone. And once you have enough XP in the thing, you can spend a mastery point or some number of mastery points to unlock it, at which point it becomes active on your account. So, like, one of the first things we unlocked was gliding, being able to jump from somewhere high and glide down on a glider, which lets you get to all sorts of cool places. And the ridiculously vertical first zone has all of these different ways that you can use your glider to get around. And there's a bunch of glider-related skills, like being able to use updrafts and being able to bounce off of springboard mushrooms and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so you get... But as you get that mastery, it's sort of like getting flight in an area. Once you have it on a character, you have it on all of your characters. So it's like hit max level, and all of your progression on that character is account-wide.
Do you have to wait till you get to max level to unlock it for your alts, or is it just there?
Nope.
It's just there.
It's just there.
So does the new Maguma stuff scale if you're sub 80?
That it doesn't.
No.
You need to be 80
You
to get there.
need to be 80. But if you pick up the expansion, you get, or I'm pretty sure if you pick up the expansion, you get a little token that's like, hey, do you want to be level 80? They sort of learned from WoW in that regard.
You get a token.
Yeah.
Singular.
A token.
So,
Well,
and it warns you, don't make sure that you're on the thing that you really want this, because you're not going to get another one.
It's true, but they also have a...
You have to confirm it several times.
Yeah, because the first time you use it on a class, and the first time you use it, it teleports you to a test zone where you're like, okay, check out how you like this class at 80. Here's a full set of gear. Here's a full set of the nicest gear in the game. Almost. Second nicest gear in the game.
The nicest gear you can buy.
Yeah, like here's a full set of gear. Here's some weapons. Here's a build. Play around with it. See what you think. Everything is totally customizable. You can swap out weapons. You can swap out your build. You can change it however you like. You can play for as long as you want in this test zone, which has a fairly.
This, by the way, actually a real zone.
Yeah, it's just a real zone that they plug you into. And if you decide you like it, you can hit confirm, and it gives you all of the gear that you just unlocked, or it gives you all of the gear that they gave you to test. It gives you your build, and says, hooray, you're level 80, enjoy. Or you can say, no, I wasn't really feeling this, revert back, and it'll drop you off in your home city with your old level and your old gear. And you can use that item on a different character to boost them up and see if you like that character more.
I need to do this because I'm probably going to boost a Revenant, but I'm not 100% certain I'm going to boost a Revenant.
I boosted about 5 different characters just to test them all out and see, and wound up boosting a Mesmer, but...
She did some testing in PvP before I started testing the boost, but because PvP lets you see at some basic level to play around with builds and things like that.
Yeah.
So one thing I think is important to say, like, when I make a complaint about this game, it's important to understand that, like, I think I probably made it further than any one of us did.
I think you did.
And, like, I have an 80, but, like, the last 20 levels of that were giveaways. So I got to 65, maybe 60, 65-ish natively.
Yeah, I got to 62 legitimately.
I'm pretty sure I got to 65 because there was something that unlocked at 65 that I got to play with. But then, yeah, like the rest of it was them just giving levels away from logging in.
Yeah, and they do a lot of that. They have a daily login.
Still do a lot of that.
Like I've gotten probably 10 or 12 little books of get a free level just as a daily login reward.
Yeah, and you also get a ton of these boost any of your alts to level 30.
Yeah,
those are from the birthday rewards.
Oh, those are from the birthday? Okay.
Yeah, if you have
So, like, I have 5 million of those because all the characters I created at launch are 4 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they don't, like, care how much you actually logged in. It's just, were you a character from launch? Okay, here's all these birthday rewards.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's one of those things that one of the features that we thought was really weird when we were first playing it, that being, like, the whole, like, you get scaled down to whatever the level of the zone you're in is.
I still think that's weird, but we'll come back to that in a minute.
It's weird, but it also means that you can go around and do whatever you want, and it feels meaningful.
So I feel like the WoW version of this same tech feels better.
That's what I was going to get to.
Yeah, like it's doing the same thing in essence, but it feels better because you just see the world as your current level. Like, there's no scaling down. It's just everything looks like it's 105 to you or 110 to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's functionally doing the exact same thing.
Right, no, it's the same thing. It's just changing the visual skinning of the world.
Better marketing.
Right.
Yeah, it's 100%. Do we make the enemies all look like they're your level, or we make you look like the level of your enemies?
Well, and honestly, like, this is a lengthy step in mentoring as a technology. Like, the first game I ever played with mentoring was City of Heroes.
Yeah.
And every game that's done it since has somehow left their mark on the technology, and it feels like they move it forward a little bit. And I think, like, what WoW is doing with their level agnostic content feels better overall, because you don't have to worry about the whole, do I have all my abilities? Am I scaling the abilities down? It's just all of my abilities do percentage base of the mob's health instead of, a actual number.
Well, and there's another piece of it that feels satisfying, which is knowing that once you're at the level cap, things are scaling to a reasonable, early gearing at the level cap. And so as you get more gear, you still get, like, one of the things I was nervous about was that it would be painful to go back and kill things for normal daily quests. But as you get more gear, you start to outstrip the scaling a little bit, enough that you can kill things more quickly, and you still feel like I'm earning something that makes me feel more powerful instead of being scaled down and having things work strangely.
Yeah. In this case,
Wars definitely has a bit of a problem with that. Because if you are undergeared for your current level, downscaling may make you awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and other games have had that problem in the past too. So
Yeah, there's definitely that. On the other hand, having everything unlocked that you have at max level, like all of your trait trees and everything,
It does make you significantly more powerful
makes
than
you-
that level character.
yeah, like the way that you progress makes you feel really powerful by comparison to, you know, the normal way you'd be in that place.
Yeah.
I kind of my issue is I enjoy running around and like blowing stuff up and like getting stuff, but I don't necessarily feel like there's a really cohesive story to any of the zones that's going on.
Well, that was admittedly the problem with the original release as well. That there were like a bunch of little vignettes of this world, but they didn't really add up to much other than the living story content. And I think that basically you can do all the living story content now, so that it doesn't.
Season 1 isn't playable.
Oh, season 1 isn't playable?
Correct.
That's unfortunate.
That's the one they did before they did the expansion, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, after that, they learned that maybe we shouldn't make this all go away when it's finished.
Yeah.
And they definitely learned, but
I have a lot of emotional baggage over this game as well, just because of my experience in alpha testing it. And
And you encountered too many people who were drinking the Kool-Aid.
Well, no, it's not even that people were drinking the Kool-Aid. It's just, like, the big problem was people weren't drinking the Kool-Aid, but the folks running the alpha test weren't listening to feedback. And it was very much we know better, so, you know, just wait, it'll be good type mentality. And to some extent, like, had they listened, a lot of the things that people like wouldn't have existed. But I think if they had listened a little bit, it may have felt better at launch. And it feels like they've now, like, just listening to you guys talk about Heart of Thorns, it feels like they've learned some of those lessons, but they've had to do it the hard way.
yeah. This game, yeah, I would agree. This game feels like they've learned a bunch of lessons, and they've learned a bunch of lessons kind of painfully, but have learned them.
Well, at release, they straight up alienated all of the Guild Wars 2 or Guild Wars 1 players.
Yeah.
And that was probably mistake number one.
How did they do that?
Because this game's nothing what those folks expected.
Yeah.
It is set in the same world. It is not the same game.
But
It is not the same game.
Well, to the same extent, like Sony, now Daybreak, but SOE, they did the exact same thing with EverQuest 1 and EverQuest 2. Like,
yeah.
EverQuest 1 players hated EverQuest 2, and for the most part, a lot of the hardcore Guild Wars 1 players hate Guild Wars 2.
Yeah.
I can understand this.
Yeah. To the point where Guild Wars 1, like, still has a significant following of those diehards because Guild Wars 2 didn't replace it.
Right. I mean, it's the same thing as EverQuest. There will always be EverQuest players that never convert to another game because that game is whatever they wanted. That was their pinnacle.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've been enjoying is in the main story stuff for the expansion is like content that I find challenging without being like a dungeon boss. Like I ran into stuff that I found challenging in the quests, like as I got closer and closer to 80 or closer and closer to the level 80 quests. Like jury's still out on the that's the word I'm looking for. The leveling experience, but there's definitely fun there, and it's definitely fun running around as 80 completing the map and stuff.
I feel like for the style of game Guild Wars 2 is, it was probably a good decision not to raise the level cap.
Yes, I think that the game not having a level, or the game not raising the level cap was a great choice.
I gotta say, I forgot how much fun playing a grenadier is.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps that Guild Wars 2 has my favorite player fantasy that I never ever get to play. And
you're playing a greatsword Mesmer, aren't you?
No, I'm playing a Duelyst Mesmer.
Really?
I'm playing it as a melee class.
Like, I totally expected you to be playing the greatsword, which is the weird summoned greatsword thing.
No, I mean the greatsword is neat, but it's not not what I'm going for. Like,
He actually gets to play as a melee caster who
Yeah.
does things with swords
I'm playing as a
and
melee
is
caster.
effective
Yep,
and tricky and other stuff.
it's great.
And really effective.
It is really effective. Well, and then they gave every class another talent tree, for lack of a better term. And the Mesmer's new talent tree is Chronomancer. So I was already a tricky melee duelist mage, and now I'm also a time mage. They gave me a shield. My shield is a giant sundial.
Unfortunately, they don't have my player fantasy at all. Like, it's not a thing that exists in the game.
Oh,
It might now.
Like tank, like sword and board tank is not a thing that exists in the game. Like the immovable object that, takes all the damage and tanks
it's
everything.
a lot closer.
Like, it doesn't really exist. Not
It
quite.
is surprisingly closer than it used to be.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you're not
the Warrior doesn't have it, unfortunately. They gave it to Guardian.
Yeah, it's on the
Yeah, and
They
Guardian
made the
as
shield
a
a lot more viable for Guardian.
Guardian as a whole just feels worse. Like I don't know. Like maybe it's better now. I have a little Guardian I can play.
I find it significantly better than it used to be. It still has no health, but it got a lot more block skills. It got some of the weapons that used to be kind of not great got better. At least all of the weapons have a unique symbol now rather than just most of them.
The thing that I vaguely remember Guardians having the trouble with is it didn't seem like it had a movement ability, like a charge or something like that.
It got one on Sword.
Okay.
Sword 2 used to be a really short teleport, and now it's a bit longer, and also drops a symbol at your feet when you land.
Yeah, it seemed like they made Guardian a lot tankier. I mean, you're certainly markedly more defensive than I could ever possibly hope to be. Well, it's not necessarily true, but definitely tankier than I am. It's definitely a game about active defenses more than passive ones in a lot of ways.
That's honestly a thing that most of these games are going to. It seems like even
Wow.
tanking in World of Warcraft is very much active defense. Like,
Although their term of active defense is different than what most other games mean.
well, it is not dodge based. It is you have to make sure you have resources up when you think a big hit is going to happen. But so far, I enjoy tanking in Legion.
I will say I don't know if I ever expected to tank again after Pandaria, because that did not enjoy tanking in Pandaria.
I did not like tanking in Pandaria really. I tried several times as a Death Knight, and it was okay-ish. But Warrior felt horrible in Pandaria. You had to do the whole God, I don't even remember the name of the ability, but the thing that did the bleed, you had to have it up on people to give an AoE threat, and
micromanage
rend. Yeah, you basically rend and pass the rend, and that was kind of your AoE bread and butter. It just felt awful. And then I tried tanking in Warlords as Warrior, and I don't know, I didn't enjoy it as much. So I got to DPS during Warlords as my ultimate player fantasy, which is sword and board damage dealer. No game will probably ever give me that again, and I will always be thankful that I had it for a period of time, because it is way too hard to itemize and scale versus tanky
It's
things.
really not. They could.
Well, the way they
Considering
went
how
about
much
it,
gear is shared between classes now, they could totally itemize that now.
it probably would work fine now. But since weapons went away in favor of artifacts, I guess it makes sense
Yeah.
why. Well, and they also took away stances, and that was how you did it. It was a stance off of protection, so you had gladiator stance.
They could give warriors four specs like they did druids.
Yeah, that'd
They're
be
never
nice.
going to do this, by the way.
No, they're not. I don't think they like the fact that they gave druids 4 specs.
They don't seem to. They seem to regret it every single time they talk about it.
Yep.
It's because
But-
there's there are correct classes in WoW.
See, and I don't feel this, but I get
feel
what
it.
you're
I
saying.
feel it's super hard.
Druid is the correct class.
Druid, monk, paladin.
I don't necessarily feel that.
Because they can do everything.
Yeah, but they're not as good at everything
Except they
as some of
really
the other
kinda
classes.
are.
They have to be. They absolutely are, because if they aren't, they're not worth playing. They had that problem in vanilla, and it's haunted them in every expansion. Like, oh,
They're-
okay, well,
They're
Druid
a
can do everything, but
version
they're-
of that ability. Like, they're a version of that role, and it is totally viable. But I think in every case, there is a other class that has that role that feels better to play.
In all the cases, like all the healing cases, that's really not true.
No, I totally disagree with that.
I feel like feels to play is totally subjective, and if they were materially better, like if you could say like priest is a better healer than druid, aside from like the feel of play, because feel of play is subjective, but like if priest were just a better healer than druid, then there would be no place for druid in the game. And that was
See, I don't buy that. Like,
It
there's
was
been
exactly the
several
problem in
times that
vanilla.
I played the subjectively worst tank. Like, there were a couple times in Warrior history that Warrior was worse than the other options. And I still played it, and I still enjoyed it, because it was my player fantasy, and being a paladin wasn't.
But having
Also, how much worse was it ever?
yeah,
There was a period of time in Burning Crusade where it was significantly worse than Paladin because
Okay,
of the
that-
whole
that was
threat
when
mechanic
Paladins
problems.
I feel
Yeah.
like you're forgetting vanilla. I feel like you
Yeah.
forget vanilla. I feel like you
He
forget
was a hunter in
vanilla
vanilla, right?
Yeah, I was 100 in vanilla.
when paladins were like not just the worst, but like so bad nobody would let them tank.
And
Right. Well, okay. There were reasons for that too, because it just didn't work. Like, I tried. My first character in World of Warcraft is Exeter, my paladin.
yeah,
I tried to be a paladin tank. It just didn't work. Seal of
exactly.
Rage did not function.
Yeah, and so as soon as they closed that gap so that you worked, that's where the difference was. That's where the difference is. You work, you can fill the role as well, or within a margin of error that is small enough that you can say I like to play this other class better or not. But as soon as you get that close, then you have a modicum of balance, because skill and gear are going to make up the rest of that gap. Whereas even the best geared paladin ever wasn't going to tank Molten Core.
But
Yeah,
I mean,
because
getting
it just
back
didn't
to-
work.
Getting back to the sort of beginning of this conversation, I mean, I'm not sure why that makes the classes that can do everything the optimum classes, because I mean, it
Because-
comes down to, for a lot of people, either doing the best at whatever their particular role is, or filling a particular player fantasy. And maybe, I mean, I included, some people value having the option of flexibility, but there's a lot more classes that have flexibility than just the ones that can do everything.
The point being that if you're in like a small group and the group is down a tank, one class can be like, oh, I'll go respec, and the other class can't.
Yep.
But I honestly, so having switched from playing a priest, which could heal or DPS, to a mage this expansion, there is undeniable value in being able to say, I want to DPS. I don't want to heal, and no one can make me do it, because this class doesn't do that. I mean, yes, if you want to, be all things to all people, and, perhaps in the interest of helping out as much as you can or whatever, but I find that those kinds of situations, like you described, are exactly the sorts of things that make people get frustrated and burn out if they don't enjoy wearing all the hats.
Yeah, like, for example, with my paladin, I know I can technically heal. There will never be in a situation where I heal.
This is
Ever.
also true for my druid.
Like,
And I
that's
mean-
never going to happen. Like, I can do it. So, essentially, I don't have any more flexibility on my paladin than I do on my warrior, because then that means I can tank or I can DPS.
I mean, this sort of like resentment goes, for me, it goes all the way back to when I started raiding back in Burning Crusade, and I played a paladin and I wanted to tank, and I was told in no uncertain terms that if I wanted to play with my friends, I had to heal. And I said, screw that, and did something else. Now, in the end, I ended up loving healing on my priest, and I actually did still heal my paladin, and I enjoyed it. But being told that I had to, or that they needed that, and I couldn't do the thing I wanted to, made me so frustrated and stubbornly angry that it made me very much value those opportunities that I get to say, no, I absolutely won't do the thing I don't want to do. And I mean, I admit some of it is because I'm the kind of person who is sort of easily peer pressured into helping out the group because I want to help out. But it always sort of ends in frustration and resentment for me, and I've seen it happen to a lot of other folks.
See, for me, it was always the frustration if I didn't have that option.
Yeah.
I would have been willing to help out if I could, but I couldn't.
And you've got, and it means that it cuts both ways, because especially in vanilla, because there was a shortage of people who could, anyone who could had to. And so on the other side of that, you've got people who are seeing people burn out who don't have the choice, because the choice is roll a new class and give up everything that you did before.
I guess for me, roll a new class feels far less punishing than it used to. Like,
I hate rolling a new class.
Oh, see, I have 12 100s. Like, I love playing alts.
So that's
but I used to, and now I don't.
Yeah.
I have 1,000 alts, and I love all of them, and
the reason
I can wear those.
The reason that Final Fantasy has so much of my devotion is because I have a character. I get a piece of gear, and that's good for something that I want to do. I keep that piece of gear. I don't see a piece of gear drop and watch it rot because nobody I know will use, because I can't use it and nobody in the group can. And that happens so much in WoW, where it's like, oh, well, this is an upgrade for our healer, and, I've got a healer, and it would be great if I could get this piece of gear on my healer, but I can't. And watching that happen so much basically turned me into, I'm not going to play anything that isn't anything that might possibly waste gear.
I mean, I definitely see that as a frustration about WoW, but not enough. Like, I have come to enjoy Final Fantasy's system, but there are a lot of times where I actually hate how hard it is, or not hard, but how unpleasant it is to roll an alt in Final Fantasy. Like, I love having alts. I like doing quests over again. I like seeing the story from a different perspective, and I like being able to play on different servers or in different kinds of settings, and it's not fun to do that in Final Fantasy. For exactly all the reasons that you said, because you already have everything on one character, and there's why would you ever do anything else? So I mean, it's definitely a very, very different perspective on what gives you enjoyment in the game.
Yeah, I think I have gotten a max level alt twice, I want to say.
Yeah, I mean, like, I technically have 15 level 100s, or 15 characters 100 or over.
Yeah,
and Grace has got way more than me, I think.
I'm not sure way more, but more.
So I got Dinar, my rogue, to level 60. And then I could not get a raid group at all, and really wanted to raid. And I knew the best way to get a raid was to be a dwarf priest. So I leveled a dwarf priest up to 60.
Yep.
And that was misery for me, but I did it because I wanted to raid, and then I got to raid as my rogue. It was awesome. I was so happy. And when our dwarf priests weren't there, I filled in with mine. And then I leveled a warrior up to max for Outland. And that's all of the times I have leveled an ult to max level. I hate it.
In an MMO.
Yeah, in an MMO. I hate it.
Yeah.
I'm a one character kind of guy.
Okay, so then for you, a class that can do everything is the correct choice. For me,
Absolutely.
that is super happy leveling alts and swapping alts, and more importantly, gearing alts, because I really enjoy the gearing phase of games.
And crafting on alts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean,
alting
I
is
feel
definitely the thing for me.
I feel like in both of your cases, you're willing to give up the efficiency for something else. But I'm still going to stick by the argument that one class that can do everything is the most optimally efficient choice.
And
Yeah,
it's-
but that's also
If
the most
you-
boring
If
choice.
you want to do everything, that is the asterisk there.
I mean,
Because if
I
you
think-
don't want to do everything, then it's not necessarily that.
I think that's fair, but I feel like over a long enough timeline, I have seen seen even the most hardcore I will never do X types do X. I've seen Ashgar play a healer. I've seen Bell
Sure,
play
in
a
games
healer.
that aren't WoW.
Sure.
Yeah.
But like I said, over a long enough timeline, you see it somewhere. I've seen Bell play finger wigglers.
Yep. But like, by the same token, I'd never actually be happy if that were my main. Like, I don't think I've ever reached that point.
I
I need to smash things in the face.
I would like more flexibility. Is my perspective on things, and I get frustrated because there are limited numbers of classes with flexibility, and like, hey, if I want to play a rogue, that means I'm just DPSing, and I'm not going to have that flexibility. And if I do that, I only will make that choice now if I'm 100% sure there is going to be enough other people doing something else.
I mean, I guess so. It's sort of funny because I think that just that statement sort of shows that part of the player fantasy still comes in, because why
It
would you even
does.
consider playing a rogue if you know that you could do essentially the same thing on a druid and do all the other things?
Because no. Player fantasy is a very real thing. I'm not saying that. What frustrates me is that I have to sacrifice player fantasy for optimization.
Yeah.
Like, I can't have my player fantasy if I want to have flexibility.
Okay, I'm just saying, like, I'm going to throw this out there, but I don't feel like you have to play games optimally. Like, that's not a thing in my world, like, playing it optimally. I'm just play a game, like, the way
I
that
mean-
feels best to me.
I would not ask a raid to go in with one healer and one tank.
I've done it
I would
before.
call that raid night.
I've definitely done that raid
Sure.
before.
Sure.
I would only ever do that if I were totally certain that everyone were on board. I would, and other options had been exhausted, or if we were intentionally doing it for funsies.
Yeah.
Like, I've been in too many situations where had I made a more group oriented choice, we could do something, and we couldn't because I didn't make that choice, then I'm not going to make that choice ever anymore. And like, I research classes extensively before I roll something in an MMO, even if there's one that just calls to me, just to see if I'm going to run into that.
Yeah, that never factors into my decision process.
I mean, like, part of the reason that I'm having trouble getting back into WoW is I find Demon Hunter compelling, but I know that the people we have a healer shortage, and so I should probably play a healer.
But
So
guess
the
what?
healer
Actually
shortage is
true.
not as big of a thing now. Like,
No.
healers level really slow.
Also, P.S. Like, I already have a healer alt. It's level 102. Like, it's definitely going to be a thing that I do. And I'm still glad that I am doing it on a character that's not my mage, because I like prioritizing something that can't heal, but still having the flexibility to sneak out and heal if I really have to. But I still have the option not to do that. I don't know, it's like a weird psychological thing, I guess, but
I mean,
it makes me happy.
but I will have more fun overall playing a class I like less if that means that the people I'm playing with can do the things that are fun for us.
But like, on the healer shortage, like, Nikaja now has Legion as of a couple days ago. Isla / Feeny is going to have, healable character. She's just level slow. So's Nakaja, she levels slow. Every expansion, healers tend to level slow. Like, I don't know what, like, other than Grace, mind you.
Well, and that's the thing is, I know I don't. Like, if I were to sit down with WoW, I would have a level 110 character by Tuesday. And if I wanted that character to be a healer, it would be a healer. I have two different characters that could easily be that. And all of the people who are already 110, who aren't, who could use a healer but don't really have one, would have one.
But, like, I don't know, in the last couple weeks, anytime that I've really tried to build a group out of the guild, I've been able to pull together a healer pretty easily. So I just didn't even, like, it was an early thing that there was a shortage of healing, but I don't know, like, I don't feel like that's a thing anymore. But I get what you're saying. Like, you would like, amongst this group right here, to be able to pull something together without issue. Or at least that's what I'm hearing, is like, between the 5 of us here, because this is like, this is the WoW group size, we didn't have a healer.
It's also, every time I've been on TeamSpeak, people are like, oh, do we have a healer? Oh, well, no. Let's see who we can find.
And every time so far, we've been able to grab one from the guild.
I'm sure.
Time.
I'm sure that's the case, but it's also a moment where do we have what we need, as opposed to being certain that you have what you need.
No problem with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. And we don't always have all 5 of us online at any given time. It's not like 100% of the time we could count on being able to do whatever we wanted whenever we were on. I mean, you'd still have times when you'd have to fish for someone from the guild or end up hugging someone or something. And I will say, it's still early in the expansion, but I have had surprisingly pleasant pugs, even when things went horribly, horribly wrong.
Yeah.
People have been talking, people have been saying hello, people have been asking questions. Like, I've been a little flabbergasted a couple of times at how relatively social people have been so far this expansion.
Yeah, tonight I had a group, and like 2 people zoned in and was like, hi, this is the first time I've been here. And I was like, it's the first time I've been here too. And somebody else chimed in and was like, yeah, I've done this once, but I don't really remember it, so we'll just, roll with the punches as we go. And we wiped horribly on the final boss, and we talked through what happened and adjusted and wrecked it the second time because there was a thing we weren't paying attention to, and nobody was grumpy over it, and people were just moving forward. And it was not a great group comp.
Those are the best parts. It's the best part of the new expansion for any MMO.
But like, that didn't used to be the case in WoW expansion groups. So maybe, like, Grace and I were talking one night, and we're like, we'll just pretend this is Final Fantasy 14. So we'll say hi as we go into dungeons. And then I did that. And at the very end of the dungeon, we realized, oh crap, we were talking in party, not instance.
Yeah,
so everything we were saying.
Huge failure. But the next time that we did that, people actually said hi when they could see us talking to them.
Yeah, and it kind of uncorked the group, and then people chatted off and on throughout the run. So I don't know, maybe a lot of the problem in the past has been me. Like I haven't been outwardly friendly. I was just expecting the group to be. So I'm trying to apply a bit of that Final Fantasy 14 community to this game. The big thing that I don't think at when we talked last week, I hadn't gotten to 110, I don't think. And I definitely really had not started doing the World Quest thing.
Yeah, I think last week I had just barely hit 110 when we recorded the podcast.
I love World Quests. So it took me a while to realize this, but basically World Quests are the garrison, but put out in the world. And instead of sending minions on these little things, you're sending yourself.
It's not really like the garrison at all.
I know, but okay, you got to understand.
It's not a good analogy.
You need to be in my head because one of the things that frustrated me about the garrison. It makes sense in my head, man. It don't make sense in my head. It's true. One of the things that frustrated me about there's a lot of stuff that only makes sense in my head. I'm just saying. One of the things that frustrated me about the garrison is you would send these people out on missions that I wanted to do. There would be flavor text in the mission saying what they were going off and doing. I'm like, why can't I just go do that? I'm the hero. But no, I gotta send, this random person that followed me home from a zone. But these world missions are basically those little things happening out in the world. And like, you go help out this faction group or that faction group, and they give you really meaningful stuff that continues to scale as you level.
Yeah, that was a huge revelation for me. I mean, I knew, in my head that it worked that way, but actually getting out into the world, doing these quests, and getting gear that was almost always an upgrade, except for maybe the PvP stuff. Getting items that I needed for crafting, or getting resources that I needed to upgrade my class hall. It's been really satisfying. And they're quick. They're like, some of them are not. Some of them are more like a traditional daily, but some of them are incredibly quick. You just run to a place, kill a mob, and you're done. Or, go and fill up the bar, doing whatever it's asking you to do in an area. But I was afraid that they were going to be tedious and long, and in fact they're pretty quick, and you can group up and they are even quicker. Or if there's other people around, you can do the shared tagging thing with folks of your faction, and it goes remarkably quickly.
And shockingly enough, I've actually done some of the PvP objectives, the open world PvP objectives. Because apparently, if you want to get me to do that, you have to dangle a really shiny piece of gear in front of me.
I feel like this has to be the right gear.
Yeah, like it has to be like a reasonable piece of gear. But the thing is this is an expansion where PvP gear is actually reasonable. Like, it doesn't have stupid PvP only stats. Like, it's just as good as any other item. In fact, it has a unique appearance, so that's kind of cool.
This actually makes me think of something I have realized about myself recently playing MMOs.
Oh?
I'm tired of the gear game.
Oh god, I love the gear game.
I don't actually like getting new gear, because then I have to go through this like spreadsheety, is this better than what I have? I like to find something that looks cool and works and stick with it. Like the coolest thing in WoW is I don't ever have to worry about a new weapon. Ever.
So the thing that I've learned about myself in MMOs is the point at which I start getting bored and stagnate is when I can no longer move the needle on the gear.
Yeah, for me it's when I stop getting new abilities.
Oh, that happens early.
Well,
Yep.
That sounds painful. I'm really sorry.
So I dislike leveling alts almost as much as Kodra does. However, you may notice I have a lot more alts than Kodra ever does. And it's because when I get bored with a class, i.e. when I run out of new stuff to learn on that class, I roll a new one, because that's something new to learn.
Yeah, my enjoyment loop for an MMO is mostly go smash things in the face, get shiny loot, wear the loot, so I feel better when I smash things in the face, get better loot, back and forth and back and forth. And like I MMOs were designed for me.
Yeah.
Man, I don't even know if I like this anymore, but I remember liking interesting gear choices.
I like gear, so it's worth noting, I like gear when it teaches me something new. Like when getting a gear upgrade changes the way that I'm playing, I love it.
So the legendaries that they've added to WoW that are sort of like the legendaries from Diablo, where actually meaningfully might change the way that you play.
Yeah.
That would be good for you.
We just haven't gotten to that point yet, which is kind of unfortunate, because I was hoping by now we would have maybe found a legendary, because you only get to equip so many, and I don't know how many.
One.
Well, okay, one until you've upgraded your class hall, then you can have two.
Then two, yes.
Yeah.
But they make, they drastically change an ability you have, or do things like that, to where you have to totally flip up what you're doing to now use this ability to the fullest.
Or they might just make what you're already doing better, because some of them don't really change you that much.
Right. But a lot of them do, and so I think that is interesting.
Yeah, and I would probably really like that. One of my favorite mechanics for Guild Wars is that different weapons have completely different abilities tied to them that not only change how you play, but change sort of what kind of thing you're even trying to do.
So I find that actually frustrating in games a lot of the time. Like I like to master a class, and so it's not just like I like learning new abilities, and that's why I have a lot of alts, but I also like playing something as a routine until I feel like I'm doing the best that I possibly can with it, which takes practice and time. And so sometimes when they throw something in there that changes it drastically, then it ends up being more frustrating for me. Like sometimes some of the class sets in WoW, they add something that makes you change your rotation or change the way that you prioritize your healing, and sometimes it's really good, but sometimes it's really frustrating when you're playing a class that you've played for a long time and you felt like you had a really good handle on it, and now you have to adjust whether you like it or not.
No, I totally agree with you. Sorry, I wasn't clear on the Guild Wars mechanic. It's a given weapon type, like longsword, greatsword, dagger, have different abilities tied to those weapons. And you have those from the moment you equip that weapon at, level 1.
Well, you don't.
You level them up.
Sure.
You no longer level them up.
Yeah, you no longer level them up.
You don't level them up?
You get the next ability in the thing at a given level. But yeah,
which means that if you switch to, it fixes the problem where if you know everything about hammers by, level 5, but you pick up a greatsword, you only have the first ability. That no longer happens, thankfully.
Now you just have all of the greatsword abilities because...
Okay. Well, that's honestly, part of the reason why I haven't branched out into some of the weapon types that I, for whatever reason, never got.
Is stupid. Yes.
Yeah,
leveling them was stupid, and they've removed that entirely, which is a huge improvement.
There's a lot of, this was stupid, so they changed it. In both this game and WoW, since I've gotten back to playing. I didn't expect to be playing either one of these games, 2 months ago.
This is, this is the expansion of they finally learned some lessons. And they learned the correct lessons this time, I think.
That said, the intro to Stormheim almost made me check out entirely.
Really? Oh, because of the story aspect?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh man, the Alliance story is so awful. It made me so angry.
That doesn't sound good for me.
It probably won't be, no.
The thing that is keeping me... So I hopped into WoW. I picked up... I don't even remember which character. Not my demon hunter, but I picked up a character. I played it for about 60 seconds and almost quit and canceled and uninstalled.
Wasn't it your rogue? Because the sound effects changed?
No, that was later. It was my monk or my druid. I don't remember which. Because all I heard for the entire time all that was happening was I was hitting a button and wondering why it wasn't going off, and hearing that sort of echoey ephemeral sound, that echoey ephemeral ability error sound. I don't know if that's a sound. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
With the sound.
I turned it off, so
that was all I was hearing.
Yeah, I turned the error sound off first thing because
not the error voice, the you can't do this sound.
Yeah, the wah, wah, wah. And wondering why my abilities weren't going off. And I'm still never really sure why my abilities aren't going off, even on a demon hunter, but I don't know, spam the button enough and eventually it happened, I guess. But the strength...
energy-based class, roughly.
The strength of the demon hunter story has been what's kept me in it.
And I think if you could make it that far, and I don't know whether you could, I think you would enjoy Suramar, because it feels like a completely new game. It's an interesting story. It's a beautiful living city.
Basically built a hostile city.
Yeah.
Yes. It is Kelethan. Not Kelethan. It reminds me of Kael Drakel for all the reasons why I liked Kael Drakel, which was, for those who don't know what the hell that is, it was the Frost and Storm giant city in the Velius expansion, and it was hostile to you. It was super hostile to you, but it was a fully fledged city. It had everything a city would. And in doing Suramar, you're basically making inroads to the city, and you're having to masquerade your way through the city, but you still have to be super careful, because if you get too close to the wrong people, they will see through your illusion and you'll straight get murdered because there's too much shit and the density is horrible.
So it's like wandering around in a dark house as an enchanter in the Dark House City.
Yes, it is exactly that.
I feel like I've done this thing.
You have done this thing in more ways than one, because Neriak is actually a not horrible representation of what Suramar feels like.
Yeah, but I haven't been able to take WoW's story seriously since Burning Crusade, and
We had this conversation.
And in Legion, I am able to for the first time since vanilla.
That may not last.
That's why what you're saying about Stormheim is like concerning to me, because
Well, okay,
I've been
so
super impressed.
I feel like there's two totally different stories happening.
There's
One of
several
which-
totally different stories happening. Some
Well-
of which are actually decent, and some of which remain awful.
Well, okay, what I mean by there's two different stories happening, like, there is the story of the Broken Isles that is told through all of these individual factions and the interesting quests that you do for them. That is awesome.
As soon as you're done with this stupid intro, Stormheim
Yeah.
is interesting. But
Yeah. Yeah, like, I feel like I had a different opinion to Stormheim going into it, because, like, Stormheim is Warrior Land. Everything to do with the
probably
Warrior
got
class
your class
hall.
hall there before you did the
Right,
intro
yes.
list, right?
Yes. And I already knew several of the key players before even setting foot in there. So, like, I could ignore the Alliance versus Horde bullshit that you wade through at the very beginning and at the very end.
Wow. You just hit on something that I think is why I like the Demon Hunter story.
You don't
Don't have to
deal with
that
that.
shit.
I don't feel like I'm a member of the Alliance or the Horde.
Nope, you're a neutral class, but
I
you
am a
just
neutral
have to
class.
you're
I
aligned with one or the other.
Yeah, I happen to be engaged in diplomacy with a particular side, but I'm not of that side.
Right?
In
You're
game mechanics terms,
Illidari.
You are, but basically you're an Illidari.
Yeah, whatever. Game mechanics I can ignore, but like having somebody literally be my boss and tell me X and Y is different.
Well, and honestly, like, the faux hammer, is it Fellhammer or faux hammer?
I don't
Whatever
know.
the name of your ship is.
Whatever,
Like,
it's a-
that becomes the
fucking
most
player
important
ship.
that becomes the most important thing to you in the world. Like,
It's already
everything
is that.
everything that is meaningful to you happens in that ship. And what's cool about Suramar is that while doing these quests, you're basically creating a neutral capital city.
Yeah, you're sort of building a new city from the ground up, or a new,
like a new Shatrith.
More or
yeah.
less.
Dalaran
I mean,
kind
it's-
of exists already.
It's a smaller scale. It's kind of more similar in scale to Dalaran, but it's you go and you start helping these people, and they found this refuge, and it's kind of crappy. And as you build up your faction and go through this story, you're getting them supplies, and you're finding more people to bring in, and you're making the place into a home.
Like, one of the quests, essentially you find a chest that would make a perfectly good bank. So
Oh.
you install it, and now you have a bank in here.
So okay, Grace, you played a monk. You've got a level 100 monk.
Yep.
Can I, as a monk, do the? I feel like I remember as a monk feeling kind of detached from the Alliance, even as a human monk. Do I get to? Can I continue that feeling? Like, does monk feel detached?
I'm going to say that Druid feels a little detached because the very first thing you do when you enter the expansion is you basically found your class hall, which is a neutral area.
And monk is the same way. The
And
monk's
warrior
class
is the same
hall
way.
is on the Wandering Isle, and it feels like when the stupid faction bullshit gets to be too much, I can go back to this peaceful turtle and chill out with everybody from both factions, and nobody cares.
That's the way
This is why
everyone's
I kind
class
of
hall
hated
is.
Stormheim, because it pulled me back into that. And I previously had done the Valshara and whatever the crazy scattered zone is, and they don't have
Asuna.
any of that.
Because I might be able to live without double jump. I feel like giving up double jump and glide might be
Double
worth
jump and
it.
glide, really.
Look, double jump.
Double jump makes everything better.
It's true. Double jump does make everything better, and
But I
some
can
amount-
I can
some
feed
amount
your
of my-
glide need.
some amount of my enjoyment of of WoW. Basically, two things have kept me from uninstalling WoW, and it's been the Strength of the Demon Hunter story and Double Jump. But but I also haven't wanted to super commit to it because every single person is rolling a Demon Hunter, and I also feel like, as previously mentioned, I would feel like I was contributing more as a monk or a druid.
So I
But I
can
get the feeling
totally,
as a monk.
I can feed your need for glide. Like, that's the thing I can do. I can make relatively easily goblin gliders that allow you to glide.
It doesn't actually take to make those, by the way.
I'm not on the right character at the moment, but like it's not expensive to make. It's like ore and something else. It's all warlord stuff, and if I would just regularly do my mines, I could keep us outfitted in gliders forever.
I don't quite understand why they're like, let's have a class with double jump. Like, let's have one class that can do this, and none of the other classes can do this.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation, and one that I hope that people at Blizzard are having right now. Like, Demon Hunter feels super mobile and super fun to just hop on and run around and explore and do things. And
It's also the only class with actual mobility abilities that do damage.
Yes.
I think, like I mentioned last
monk.
week, it's... Well, I guess they have Flying Serpent Kick and
Yeah.
the Spinning
Yeah.
Kick thing.
I mean, Demon Hunter. So Demon Hunter feels like it moves better than most of what I'm doing in Guild Wars, which is the thing which helps a lot.
I said that last week. WoW is still really good at that. Also, Demon Hunter it's interesting. It is. Well, you said during beta it felt more like a WildStar class than a WoW class,
Yeah,
and
it absolutely does.
It's designed like WildStar class.
It's like, hey, did you like WildStar? We'd really like you to come back and play our game, so we're going to give you WildStar Warrior. More or less. I mean,
That's not that far from the truth.
Playing Demon Hunter feels really good. It feels like it feels like the class, like the evolution of the classes that I've always enjoyed playing in WoW. Like Rogue to Death Knight to Demon Hunter feels like a pretty natural progression.
well, the weird thing is like, okay, yeah, they got double jump, and double jump is superior, but everybody seems to have gotten some new movement perk, or at least the ones that didn't have one now have one. Warlocks, for example, have a really great movement buff, but it's super warlocky. You catch yourself on fire.
Yeah.
That's not new, but yeah.
Oh, it wasn't new?
No.
Okay. I just started playing Warlock, so I don't know if it was new or not. But basically,
Yeah,
you set yourself on
they can light
fire,
themselves on fire to run faster.
right? And you can keep it on as long as you have health.
I have learned since our last podcast that they completely got rid of my original spec.
Combat? I think you
Combat.
mentioned that.
Yeah, it's now outlaw. You're a pirate.
Yeah, no. So if I do come back and decide to play this game, I'm going to have to drastically respec my rogue because he's not, like, the player fantasy is not outlaw.
Man, it just made everything about a rogue better to me. But that's because I don't like rogues.
It
Sure.
also, that spec had a hard time finding an identity. It really did.
Well, I mean, originally it was sort of it was like a swordsman. It was very or
Like I said, that spec had a very hard time finding an identity.
it was a swordsman, or it was the like
Most
You wanted-
boring high DPS class you could play.
yeah that combat daggers.
Still
was
that
dumb.
if you spec into the slice and dice.
That said, now that I understand how that dice mechanic works, I don't have much interest in that.
Yeah, no, like it's
That's
the
why
most.
slice and dice is there.
Yeah,
It's
no,
the-
but slice and dice isn't actually better. Like, slice and dice is trying to get rid of the thing that is doing well. Like, it's just like it's a press your luck game. And
Yeah.
if you like playing press your luck games, then you'll really like that class. And if you don't like that press your luck games, maybe look at assassination or subtlety.
I think that's also why I like it, because I like the random chance of just being awesome for 15 seconds
It's like
or whatever.
But yeah, you should bet on that never happening, basically.
Right.
But like, even if you get 4, that's like you're still
Can't
gonna
get
be
4.
doing crazy.
You
Can't get for it.
you 100%
Oh, right.
convinced me that I don't want to play a rogue. I was like waffling because I was curious about that.
Well, no,
spec,
that's combat rogue. Regular rogues are regular rogues. Combat
Yeah.
rogue is this weird. Combat rogue is the pirate from League of Legends.
Combat
Right.
Rogue is the pirate from FF11, is what it is.
combat
Right.
rogue is the thing that changed.
Yes.
Yes.
The big thing that happened with subtlety and assassination is basically their abilities got segregated. Like, so assassination has their own abilities and subtlety has their own abilities.
In
And
a lot
that's
of cases, the subtlety one is the assassination one renamed.
As far as I could tell, like messing around with the level 100 rogue and respeccing it and mucking about with it, the subtlety and assassination are almost totally unchanged. Like
Subtlety is
from
pretty different.
Fundamentally, I mean, I guess subtlety is pretty.
Subtlety
different
is
because
actually
subtlety
very
was always a
different.
disaster.
because Subtlety sort of found its identity as the stealth in combat rogue. They got weird shadow magic stuff.
I mean, that's probably funny. I don't know how that works in.
Like
Well,
CV.
Doesn't stuff de-aggro?
No, you have a buff that makes you act like you're in stealth.
Oh, got it.
Just letting you use like all of your stealth abilities and your various stealth bonuses, so on and so forth.
Right.
So yeah, the concept behind the swin, what is it? The
Outlaw.
outlaw is you roll 6 dice and 6 six-sided dice, and your goal state is you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That is basically never going to happen, and you should not count on it ever.
Sure, but like, so what does that mean as a rogue you're doing? Are you like saying, I'm happy if I get 2 buffs?
You are quite happy if you get 2 buffs.
Okay.
Yep.
You should stop rolling for a while. Because it lasts for like a minute.
36 seconds, I think.
well, it depends on how many combo points I think you had going into it.
Yeah, but always it's 5.
5 or 6.
Oh,
You
right.
can get 6.
Right.
That does not sound like a class I want to play.
Yeah, but like,
It's actually common to all rogue specs now.
But,
So paladin
but
uses
okay,
combo points.
RNG bullshit aside, what is nice about that class is it can function at range, it can function in melee,
It
and
can
it lets you
function at
move
range.
back and forth.
Belly can't function at range.
yeah. I was
You
about
can
to
do
say-
something while you're running away, which is better than
Yeah,
most rogues can.
All rogues.
Oh.
Well, subtlety can at least.
Oh, that's right.
Assassination has like a dagger throw or something too that gives
That's
you a combo
right.
point.
They got rid of those. Yeah, assassination is a
Well,
dagger throw. I was
okay,
wondering what that ability was for. and
what I
forgot
mean,
that they
like,
got rid of
does-
having a bow.
Does the dagger throw actually build combo points?
For assassination, I think it does.
Okay.
Subtlety, I'm not sure.
Because that's the thing that I do with Outlaw. If I need to run away, I just start firing my gun and build combo points while I'm running away so that when I finally get in range, I can do something.
Yeah, I do this with Moonfire. But that's
I
not
like it because I
exactly
get to fire a gun.
functional. That's just I'm trying to find something to do so I'm not doing 0 DPS while running away.
Right, exactly. Like that. I mean, but traditionally that's been a problem with melee is like you have to run away, so now you're going to do 0 DPS for a period of time. My equivalent to that as a warrior is to throw my axe that I don't know where I get this axe from, but apparently it's summoned out of my ass.
It's a hammer space axe. Hammer space
Clearly.
is a well-known phenomenon.
Where the cleerics keep their hammers.
Yeah, hammer space is real. It's where all of your good weapons are. It's where all of your best weapons are hidden.
Clearly.
And then just get pulled out as needed.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's where I keep that staff, apparently. Well, I guess I'm not carrying a staff anymore. I guess that's where the daggers go now.
So the other tweak that I really like is the last expansion that had what was it? What was the recruitment hall? The town hall? Was that what recruited champions and let you have bodyguards?
So in Warlords,
Yeah.
So in Warlords in your garrison, you needed an inn to recruit more followers, and you needed the barracks to let you be able to have them go with you out in
Okay.
the world. So it's 2 separate buildings.
Okay. Basically, barracks is what I was talking about, where you could have a bodyguard and you could have someone out in the world with you, which was cool in some ways and not cool in other ways. what they've done this time around that's really neat is you can still have a bodyguard that you assign at your order hall, but what they do is vastly dependent upon what kind of follower they are. Like, some of them are literally just a spell. Like Hodir, for example, whenever I get him, I hit another ability and he comes in and freezes everything and then goes away again. My Finna something or other.
All I can think of is Ash combat resing people while tanking Hodir. That's all I can think of when you do that.
Look, I am eating up the fact that I now have bosses from Ulduar as companions, because I have Thorum and Hodir, and they gave me a named Rune Iron Dwarf that runs around with me, and like they do different things. Like I don't. Grace, what are some of the ones yours can do? Because yours seem really interesting.
So mine, well, I have Caligos, and I can make him come in, and he will do a large amount of damage and temporarily freeze my enemies. And I think Archmage Vargoth will give a buff that will buff not just you, but your whole party when you're questing out in the open world. And then I think my other two are both bodyguards. So I have Millhouse Manastorm, who is an arcane mage and mostly does damage and says silly things. And then Archmage Modera from the head of the Kirin Tor is also my minion, and she's my buddy. That's who I usually use. And she's a frost mage, so she'll slow things and freeze them and also do a little damage. But it's just, they actually behave in a reasonable way and are actually useful. Like the bodyguards, I had a problem with them in Warlords because they often just ran off, did weird pathing things or weird aggro things, and died a lot, and there was like a 30-minute cooldown. I mostly just ignored them, honestly. But here, it feels really valuable to have either that extra button or that extra person following you around. And when they are following you around, they actually seem to be pulling their weight.
Oh.
Yeah.
And even more than that, what I've now discovered, because I've leveled all the way up and I've started upgrading them, they have equipment slots. And I've gotten one or two different ones, but generally, like the one I have now, my follower has an item that gives an extra bonus amount of gold every time I do a world quest when they're my companion. So every time I'm out questing with Archmage Modera, I get an extra 15 gold or something every time that I finish a world quest, just as a bonus.
Yeah, and I have an equivalent version of that, but it's order resources. So, like, I'm constantly adding additional order resources, which are useful for all sorts of stuff, including gear upgrades. Because I've spent a lot on gear upgrades in the last week. But, like, that's the thing that I've noticed this expansion is, like, they've taken ideas that didn't really work last time around, but tweaked them in a way to where they totally feel good now. And all of them seem to be giving me reasons to go out into the world and do stuff instead of hang out in a garrison.
Yeah, I am super happy that even though you walk into your order hall and that setup sure looks a lot like your garrison, between the length of time that things take and the way that the mechanics work, it feels utterly different.
So there are other people there.
And there are other people there, and there's way more useful things to be doing with yourself out in the world. Like, there's still a mission board to send your followers out. It rewards
you interact with for all of like 30 seconds.
Right. I mean, it rewards a little gold or, a little bit of artifact power or a little bit of experience for your followers. So it's not, it's still useful, but it doesn't take up a ton of your time. You can also do that now with an app while you're eating your lunch instead of when you want to be actually playing the game. which is another huge quality of life improvement.
It reminds me of the conversation we were having the other day, Belle.
Yeah.
It's another piece of that.
Which is
trying to figure out how to like put it concisely. I feel like WoW does not want to admit that you might want to play another video game. For better or for worse. They want to be the one place you go to play video games.
Well, I think that's not necessarily a WoW thing, but I think that's a Blizzard thing that they would really like. They really like Blizzard players and not necessarily general gaming players.
Yeah.
Because they're absolutely presenting you a whole bunch of different games that kind of sort of interact with each other and gives you the opportunity to play a bunch of different genres instead of just one. And I absolutely know people that are Blizzard gamers. Like, they play all the Blizzard games, and that's really all they play. And this goes back to the conversation we've had a couple times about how Blizzard is really good at creating Blizzard players, but they're not really good at getting those people to convert to other genres and titles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your comment that, like, WoW is best played when you're doing all of the things. It's like, that's such a huge time commitment that I would never be able to do anything else.
Well, but the thing is like, it's only worth it if you're really enjoying yourself. Like, right now, I'm enjoying the hell out of doing all the things.
Yeah.
Like, I am happy. Like, I'm excited beyond reason right now, because during this podcast, I'm using that time to play my paladin and get at some levels so that I can have a miner, so I can do other interesting things on my warrior main that has a really stupid combination of trade skills. Like, I'm happy about this. Like, I'm all about alting this character, but, like, I've been playing the warrior because there was a bunch of interesting stuff to do on the warrior that I didn't want to play something else. And I'm perfectly fine realizing that these are both two massive time sinks. And as soon as I start playing up other alts, those are going to be other time sinks. But so long as I'm enjoying myself, I don't care.
See, and from my perspective, I don't have enough time for that.
Well, this is part of why when I'm really into an MMO, I tend to not play a lot of other games. Sometimes it makes me sad, and sometimes it makes me kind of happy because, I don't have a ton of money to buy a lot of new games all the time, and for $15 a month or for free at this point, I can play WoW, and I can do a lot of different kinds of things in there for my, $15.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, like, I've just come to accept the fact that if I have to choose what I'm going to do with myself in a given night, I am going to go play an MMO. I don't know which one, but I'm going to go play one. Like, if you put me in front of my Steam library and leave me alone, I will boot something up for 30 minutes to an hour, and then I will be right back into an MMO because it scratches whatever itch I have. And it is the happiest I am usually when gaming. And the problem is like, in single-player games, I feel like I'm alone in them. In multiplayer games, I feel like oftentimes I'm not really building towards anything. So I guess for me, MMOs kind of are that happy medium of that thing I always kind of wanted.
Yeah.
And then I just cycle back and forth between whichever one I'm super into at a moment.
I always feel like if I'm not devoted wholly to it, then I'm just going to be behind where I ought to be.
So that's one thing that I struggle with a lot playing various MMOs, and it's something that I've mostly managed to get over this expansion, and wow, like, I am doing things at the pace that I feel like doing them. I'm going backwards and helping my friends who aren't as far along, and I'm not resenting it because there's still useful things for me to do from doing that. And I'm just trying to enjoy myself and not worry about whether or not I'm behind. Like, we're not raiding, we're not doing anything that's, like, really time dependent. And even if we were, who cares if it takes an extra couple weeks before, like, I'd rather enjoy myself. And the the way that the level scaling worked, I think worked especially well for me because I could actually complete all of the zones and not feel like I had to rush off to whatever the next thing was to make sure I was getting the best possible gear or the most experience, because everything was scaling and giving me exactly what I needed for wherever I happened to be.
And a big part of it for me is like, I know I'm not on the bleeding edge. Like, that happened weeks ago. Like, that ship sailed, and I don't care. Like, I'm enjoying where I'm at, and I feel like even when I'm doing content that's not necessarily optimal for me, I'm still getting a lot of benefit from it. And the other, like, the stupid cool thing that happened, and I didn't even know this was a thing that you could do. I pugged as DPS just because I didn't want to tank. So I pugged a dungeon, and it went pretty smoothly. And somewhere along the line, a necklace dropped, and one of the people said, I could use that. Do you mind? I'm like, can I do this thing? So I opened up a trade window and was able to trade this personal loot item I got over to this other player. I didn't think that was a thing, but apparently it is. So that's kind of cool. Like, so if you're running, it's the whole Diablo 3 thing where, like, if you're running with two of the same class and one of them gets a drop that they don't need, you can totally share it. And apparently that works too in WoW now.
Yeah, I got an item that I couldn't use, but our healer could, and so I passed that off to them, and everybody felt better about it.
I feel like I remember that from last time I played.
Well, you could trade, like, if you were running normal loot, aka where the boss drops 2 items. That was always a thing. You could always trade it. But they added in personal loot, and now that's the default drop type for running any kind of random content. And that's where every time you kill a boss, you get a roll on their loot table, and you either get gold or an item. And it will only ever be something you can use. Now, it may not be, like, you may already have an upgrade in that slot, but it'll at least be something equipable by you. Those are the drops that I didn't realize you could trade. But apparently you can, like, and since jewelry is totally non-class based now, you can pretty much use any jewelry item, given that your primary stat swaps.
Well, jewelry doesn't have primary stats anymore.
Oh, yeah, true. Other than stamina.
Yeah, stamina and secondary stats.
I think we still call stamina primary stat, right?
Technically.
Yeah.
Well, they seem to have reserved the term exclusively for strength, intellect, and agility.
Yeah. But yeah, so, like, you get a ring, and, like, if it's an upgrade for somebody else, you just swap it to the other person, and life goes on, and everybody felt better about it. So I guess, like, I'm not really chasing some goal right now, and that won't always stay the same. But from what I understand, you can essentially get the same level of gear from open world stuff as you can from raiding. That's what I understand. Like, you can choose one of the, like, either path. It may take a lot of luck and a lot of repetition to get it from the open world, but I mean, I've already gotten epic from a world quest.
Yep, and legendaries I think have been confirmed to come from at least the sort of bonus caches that you can get, if not actually the world quests themselves.
I know Rixie has 2 legendaries already, but he plays like 24/7, so.
Well, and they definitely drop in like mythic and probably heroic dungeons. So, but I still consider that group content.
Yeah.
Right.
The other really cool thing that happened this week is the Sleeper Awoken.
There's an accident.
No, it's absolutely it was people on Reddit trying to figure it out, and they eventually figured it out.
I thought they were trying to figure out something else.
They were trying to find a mount.
Yeah, they were trying to find a mount, but they did one instead of the other, but it doesn't change the fact that they were absolutely working together.
Trying to find something.
Yeah.
What they found was not what they expected.
And we happened to be on, I don't remember what night it was. Was it Monday night? When all of a sudden a message came across Zone saying that so-and-so had summoned this boss, and it's off on an island by itself that I had to take a goblin glider from Dalaran to get to. And by the time I got there, it was already dead, but it also started spawning like every 5 minutes and requires like either a pug raid or a reasonably balanced raid to take it down. But supposedly there's an attunement quest that actually allows it to drop loot, but that was kind of cool. I think they also maybe found the mount they were looking for, and that one's more annoying. It requires you to like click 3 items that appear somewhere in Suramar and be like the first person of the day to find all 3, and then you get awarded a mount.
So like
Lost Proto Drake 4.0.
Yeah, basically. It's like, yeah, it's worse than the Lost Proto Drake. I agree with you, Ash, now. But it's a thing. Like, it's cool that there are hidden mysteries like that.
Every single time. Like, just...
It makes me think of the Karen Tor pet.
Have that pet.
I also
like that pet.
I like that pet a lot. It took
The Dust Bunny.
It took me days to
the
get
original one.
the little elemental.
Oh, the read books one.
Yes,
Yeah.
that one. You had to catch the books as they spawned around Dalaran. Yes. Hope that you
Higher
didn't get a
learning.
fake book.
And at least that was one where people could somewhat work together on, in that if you were
Someone
in
would shout,
a
hey, this book is
channel,
up at this place.
Yeah.
And it would stay up for, a minute or two.
Like,
so
only
that
5
people
minutes,
could
but-
click, yeah.
Still.
But there's a lot of that sort of stuff that I'm finding, that just little mini objectives for you to do that have cool things at the end of them. It feels like a Piddle expansion. Like, you can find ways to piddle around happily for hours, and all the while feel like you're doing something important, but not actually be doing anything serious.
It's really interesting because, like, it's super interesting to hear you say that, because that is almost verbatim how I would describe why I'm having fun with Guild Wars 2.
Yeah, but the big difference is, there's like, okay, I've not started Maguma. Let me preface this statement. But everything I was doing in the old world felt like I wasn't doing anything important because there was never loot at the end of it. Loot or an item has to come at the end of it for me to care about it, really.
I've
Like-
gotten tons of loot and tons of items, and
Right, like I said,
kinds of
I've not
interesting
started
My
the new
inventory is overflowing with gear. This is
Yeah.
not in Maguma at all. This isn't
no,
a normal
we
place.
barely touched Maguma. We're in the open world, in the old world.
Maybe they went back through and re-itemized stuff. Like, random
they
drops
added
off mobs.
random drops to stuff, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, random drops are a thing. There is, so actually, Bill, you would probably love this. There's when you salvage a magic item, you have a chance of getting an essence of luck, and the more essences of luck you get, the more gear you get to drop. It's like your luck. It's a luck stat, and your luck stat, which again is account wide, your account wide luck stat gets more stuff to drop for you. Like, you get a higher chance of magic find, basically.
They used to have magic find on gear, which they ripped out.
Yes, because they realized how awful that was. But yeah, like, I just picked up an item that I don't even know what it does, but it seems to start a quest, and we'll see what happens there. But yeah, like, the idea of I can piddle around and everything I do feels like I'm getting something done, and it feels not meaningless. That's totally the same thing that I'm enjoying about playing Guild Wars.
Yeah, and maybe post Heart of Thorns, everything got better. Maybe Heart of Thorns was the 2.0 Diablo patch for that game.
That seems to be what people think. That is the comparison that a lot of people, at least on the Guild Wars 2 Reddit, have made. That it was like a significant. It was as significant as it could get without the game fundamentally just being a different game.
Diablo is still the biggest example of that I've seen, but
Yeah.
this is. I wouldn't say this is quite there, but
I feel like Taken King is also a pretty decent example of that. Like, that made that game magically better. Like, a lot of things that were wrong with it were just not wrong anymore.
I've heard that from more than just you. I've heard that.
So I will give Guild Wars 2 another shot, and like probably get out of the zone I've been in for a very, very long time.
Just run around with us. Like, honestly, what's been super fun has been wrecking balling around with Ash and Kodra, wandering a zone, finding new stuff, chasing.
Occasionally running into something and getting smashed in the face, but hey, that happens.
Occasionally running into something that kills the shit out of us, because that'll happen sometimes. Finding new gear and mucking about.
But basically, I'm glad that my class no longer gets 3-shot by normal enemies, which used to be a thing when I was playing this game.
Yeah.
So, like, some balance changes have occurred.
Well, and honestly, like, I've always been able to do gold veterans, but only because I could stun lock them.
Yeah, they maybe changed the system how that works now, too.
Yes.
Well, no, I did one, like, the other day, so apparently it's still a thing. Like, that was what I did when I logged in on my warrior, is a gold veteran just happened to be up, and I stun locked it and killed it.
A gold veteran or a gold champion?
Flagged veteran, gold.
Okay.
Veterans are actually the bronze ones.
Because veterans are bronze.
Maybe it was a champion. I don't know. There were veterans in the pack with it, but the thing I was killing was gold.
Wow. I don't know what the deal is with that. That's intense.
Hammer used to be super powerful, and it seems to largely still be powerful.
I get 2-shot by champions.
Well, no, they're like not damaging me. Like, I'm alternating between the stun and the knockdown.
Here, I thought Mesmer was a control class.
Well, no, like that's what warriors used to do in dungeons. Was like they stunned things. That was your function in a dungeon. Is you are going to run hammer and you are going to stun things. And anytime the boss tried to do anything that was going to damage the party, is you go stun them. Like, that's your job. You stun, and that's how you tank. And I understand that's no longer the thing in a dungeon, because dungeon bosses have break bars, as I think they call them. But yeah, no, like that's still apparently a thing on open world old world mobs, that you can stun them.
Yeah, it seems to me.
Guardian Hammer is not quite so control-y.
I've got a hammer.
Well, technically, I think hammer has 3 stuns. Like, you've got your
overload, or whatever they call it.
Right. You've got a stun, you've got a knockdown, and then your F1 ability is also a targeted area of effect stun. So yeah, it was kind of the CC class. And the funny thing is, like, we were talking about builds, and I read up on a couple of them, and there were several guys that said, if you're not running with people, just run 4 signets, you'll be fine. And like, that was what I was saying. Is like, I felt like I didn't have any really interesting things to choose from, because running 4 signets just felt like the way to go for soloing.
Warriors run 5 signets?
No. Well, technically we could, I think. It's just, I always want to heal. Like, I want to heal and then 4 signets.
For a lot of classes, the heal signet is really good, like for rogues. And
the warrior heal signet's horrible.
The heal signet for Mesmer is amazing.
No, heal signet is one of those buttons that you never want to accidentally push, because it's far better for the region that it's giving you than the healing.
I don't know what these signets you're talking about are.
If you play an engineer, engineers don't have any. Yes.
I do.
Yeah, no, like one of them gives me extra might, like one of them gives me precision, maybe.
For all of the other classes except Revenant, signets are abilities that have an active effect and a passive effect. After you use the active effect, the passive effect is disabled.
Until it regenerates.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's pretty neat. Like, as a type of ability, I actually really like it.
But at least for like a lot of mine, I am far better never pushing it. Like, I just want it to give me the passive buff, and that's going to be better than what it does on use. But the thing that I would like to, like, I mean, you guys are getting towards 80, right?
Mm-hmm. Ish.
Yeah, like the thing that I would like to do is actually run a dungeon and see if they are reasonable yet, because that was the big thing that killed me.
I don't think that is what we should run. I think what we should run are fractals. Apparently people still think dungeons are not really great, but fractals are the new dungeons, and they're cool.
Then fractals have been changed a lot, because like I remember when fractals first went in, people were complaining how broken fractals were. So it sounds like maybe that's been fixed.
Maybe? I have no idea.
Because fractals are basically like roguelike dungeons, I think. Where like you get a bunch of random stuff. but your rewards like increase the deeper you can go in, I think.
Something like that. I honestly have no idea what they are, but they seem interesting.
Yeah. I know when they first went in, I was super interested until people were reporting they just weren't reasonable, and I stopped being interested. So if they've made them reasonable, then that sounds awesome.
There's also like guides to fractals, whereas guides to dungeons are still about how to win the dungeon by fighting the fewest possible things.
Well, and honestly, like most of the dungeon guides and most of the accepted methods through the dungeon involve exploiting terrain, exploiting dead zones where the mobs can't actually hit you.
Yeah.
And that always felt horrible. Like, that's just not the way I want to go through a dungeon. Anyway, do we have anything else we want to talk about before we wrap things up?
We've gone on really long.
Yes, we have.
So I'm going to say no.
Okay. Well, hopefully you all enjoyed our super rambly discussion of like PAX and Guild Wars 2 and World of Warcraft. At some point, I promise we're going to record the Witness show. I just don't know when. Anyway, hopefully you have a good night, and we'll see you next week. Bye!
Good
Good
night.
night.
See you.